Hello. Happy Monday morning. I hope everybody's doing well today. Thanks for being here with me. And we're going to talk about something that may take 2, for sure, episodes, maybe 3. But first, I'm going to start out with a corny joke because I think humor is a good way to start the day. Did you hear about the man who invented knock-knock jokes? He just won the Nobel Prize. I know, it's really corny. It's really silly. Anyway, sillier, I think, the better, because we just laugh at the dumb joke and how silly it is. So, all right. So I'm Mary Alice, and welcome to my channel. And if this is the first time you're here, thank you for being here. And I've been doing a series on personal growth and development and spiritual awareness. And I started August 15th. And we started at the beginning when we are young little babies and what goes on inside us and how do we operate as human beings. I feel like that's such an important thing to understand, how we operate as human beings. What are the functions of our, not just our body, but our mind and our brain, our feelings and our emotions? How does it all play into who we are? So, because it's very important to understand that, because we're going to start right there today about relationships. So, start at the beginning. So, if you go back a few weeks and we talked about how we start out as human beings and we're just these little babies and we're in our own world, our own environment, our own families full of whatever they believed, the traditions, their attitudes, their energies. Many people come from decent home life, happy, pretty decent upbringings. But many of us also came from very dysfunctional, hurtful, abusive homes. I know that was in my life. So if we look at that, and you heard me talk about how a child only knows who they are by how they are treated. Otherwise, how are they going to know, right? So if you think about a pretty decent upbringing, a healthy upbringing, you have people, good parents, and they love you and they want to make sure you have good education and you have good nutrition and they're giving to your every trauma, tantrum, which we can't do that with children. We can try and understand what their needs are. We can understand, maybe they're overtired, maybe they're hungry or very thirsty, and so they act out. So we need to take care of those needs, but we needn't give in to everything that they want, because that creates a whole other problem. And I'll talk about that at another time. Anyway, so here we are, we're these young little people and we're living in our homes. We may have siblings, older or younger. Maybe we're the only child. But we are being created. Our personalities are being developed, and how we see the world is being created by how people see us. So let's look at it in the opposite way. Like, we're in dysfunctional homes and we're not brought up in the best of ways. And in my house, it was abusive, and I was from a large family, and I had to figure everything out by myself. And I was scared. I was lonely. I was never safe. And I had to observe a lot, observe other people, observe my friends and their families and go, oh, that's the way it's supposed to be. They're really nice. Their dad is really nice. I like this family, and make friends that way and have friends show me. They didn't know they were showing me, but I was observing them and how they were living and knew that life could be better and that families could be nicer. Fathers don't have to be abusive. So, but here's the thing. However we were raised, we automatically are developing in our psyche, in our paradigms of life. Paradigms are a collective systems of what we think is truth, or what we believe, or what we were told to believe, or what we believe about ourselves. So it's a whole collection of things that is embedded in our minds. and experiences as well. And that can include good things, difficult things, abusive things, happy things, traditions, all kinds of things are collective that we create a paradigm within our own minds of who we are in the world around us. And that becomes our default way of living. That's all we know, right? As kids, that's all we know. When we get a little older, maybe 9, 10, 11, we begin to see life a little differently. We begin to observe differently. So we want to take on the good things. We see better things in life, and we're learned to really think a little better. At this stage, still, it's black and white. It's pretty concrete thinking, but about preteen and on, it begins to be, we're more consciously aware, and there are a little bit of philosophical ways that we can begin to think, and into high school. But most of us are still living by default because that's all we know. We don't know any better. So if we have low self-esteem, we don't think we're very worthy. We're shy, or maybe you've developed a system and a coping mechanism, because I talked about coping mechanisms and how they start. Remember, you can go back and listen to that, because that's really key to understand about ourselves. Really key, because it involves a lot, and about our inner child and about triggers and coping. It's something to really understand. So that video is on here. You can go back and look it up. So we have our coping mechanisms and all that in place. And we have our own little personalities, but our personalities get a little twisted if we're from homes of dysfunction. Not little, sometimes a lot. And some people become really rebellious. They just can't stand authority. Their whole system has been uprooted. So they can't even think real clearly, and they can't focus very well at times. And so studies are difficult. There's so many things at play. And I just want to give you this background, because I want you to think of yourself as that individual. We're going to talk about individuals right now before we talk about relationships. Usually in life, usually late, probably early 20s more than anything. And it could be either end, maybe in the teens or after, maybe 30s. But at some point, we begin to bump up against life, and it causes pain. Pain is a teacher. We bump up against life because we're realizing these coping mechanisms that we developed in childhood aren't working for us anymore in adulthood. We need to adjust, and we need to make changes. I talk about that too in previous videos. But we have to become a better, whole functioning human being. And life has a way, our inner guidance system, and that spiritual DNA in us. Yes, we are spirit with human clothing. I totally believe that. I'll talk about that again. I'll go in more detail. But we have that within us trying to help us, trying to give us clues and signals that let's say you suffer from low self-esteem. It's trying to teach you, no, you're better than that. You're better than that. You don't have to put up with that. You're a lovely human being. You just have to understand that about yourself. Or maybe you're very super rebellious and you don't believe in rules or laws or authority or anything, which is another extreme. And that causes pain. That causes a lot of disruption. Because to live in society, we have to have a civility about us. That's just common sense. We have to be civil. We can't always just get what we want and be rebellious and fight and think one way. Again, that's from a coping mechanism developed in childhood that no longer serves us in adulthood. So we have to learn these things about ourselves, and it's very important that we do. And then we come into life, and we all come into this world wanting to love and to be loved, right? We want to be loved. We want to be accepted. We want to be liked. We want to have friends. We want to hang out. We want to connect. especially if we didn't connect well in our families. There's this deep need to connect in another way. And if issues of our upbringing aren't really taken care of, the way we choose to connect might not be the healthiest way. It just might not be. People have the misconception of hooking up is some kind of way to relate. It's not. It's just a physical way to relate. It's not the whole package. It's not about love or being loved. Some people think controlling, having a controlling demeanor, I'll make them love me. Well, we know that never works, right? That just doesn't work. And it's abusive. We can't make anybody love us. It doesn't work that way. But the desire is so deep that a person who's been twisted and warped into thinking that they can control somebody, they can make them love them, that's more of a disorder in a person than anything else, because that's not likely to happen. And we know that. That's just abusive behavior. Some people just want to be liked so much they'll do anything. They'll do anything for anybody. And that is a type of codependency. We need to love ourselves fully and completely, the best we know how on any given day, to show up and be present in life. When we love ourselves, when we understand our core values, our own values, when we understand our own self-esteem, our own self-worth, when we understand all the good parts about us, all our abilities and talents, and working on to make them better, and also accepting and understanding some of our weaknesses or places where we might be able to develop a better system of living, our operation of looking at the world and not being so judgmental or gossip or putting people down. That's just a dysfunction in our life. That's not a place of love where we need to come from in our lives. It's a place of love. So I'm bringing it up to this point because how many of us, let's say in our early 20s, had any concept of that? Probably very few of us did. We're just having fun. We're in college. We're learning. We're out there. We want to hook up. We want to be loved. We want to have a relationship. We want to fall in love. We want to get married. We want to have kids. We want to pursue our career and have a nice relationship. I mean, there are many different scenarios, but mostly about wanting connection and wanting to have that partner. No matter how you identify, we're all wanting that in our lives at some point. Now, I'm saying all, that's a very general statement. There are some people who should not be in a relationship. We'll talk about that too. And then I'm talking about people who have a personality disorder, but they don't know that they do. So I'm going to talk about that maybe later on here or Friday for sure, because we need to discuss those issues openly and be aware. So we come into life, we're in our 20s, we really want to have, we date, we want to meet people, we want to find that one, right? Or we hope to anyway. That's the point of it. And so in our circles, in our social circles, it could be anything. It could be your social circles of people you knew in college and you're still good friends with. It could be maybe you're in a church and you have a church organization or circle of friends from there, or a work circle of friends. Who knows? It could be neighborhood friends, whatever. You have a circle of social settings where, gosh, you hope to meet somebody. But in this day and age, it seems like people meet a lot of people online. And they're different, there are different apps for that. And there's Match.com, and there's, is it Harmony? And there's, I don't know, different apps. I'm not very familiar with them because I personally don't like them. That's me personally. So anyway, my doorbell's ringing and I don't know who's there, but I need to ignore them. So anyway, here's the thing. Very few of us show up in this world with, or in our 20s, really knowing ourselves. We're still discovering ourselves. We're still discovering what we like, what we want to do, what our abilities are, where we're going in life. So we have to understand that. But we still fall in love. We find people we fall in love with and we start our life out with, right? Let's just put it this scenario. So you're finding someone that you feel like you want to commit to. Okay, if you're still living by default, which many of us are, you're having this individual still living by default, and you have yourself living by default. And so many times, not 100%, but many times, what attracts each other is the default mode, not the mature, healthy, reasonable, rational mode of thinking. It's the emotions. Our emotions are within our deep sense of our paradigms and within our mind. They live there. We're very emotional beings. We're very emotional beings. And we have to learn over time that we have to connect our emotions with our mind, the evolved part of the brain. Because sometimes our emotions can carry us away and take us away. And we should never always take our feelings seriously at any given moment. We have to think about it sometimes, like, boy, I'm really overreacting here. Why am I overreacting? Boy, what happened? What took off in me? Well, we'll get to that because that's your inner child coming up, popping up, and triggering you to protect you. And I talked all about that. I hope you go watch the other videos because I've been very strategic in how I'm doing this so that it will build and it will make sense. So here we have two adults who love each other, and each of them have their little emotional upsets and holes of dysfunction in them because they haven't known clearly enough to understand what those are or accept them or do something about it. They think, oh, that's just who I am. Oh, I found somebody who loves me just the way I am. And all along, this is what's happening. Oh, they're gonna just make me feel wonderful. They're gonna fill all those holes in my being, and it's gonna be wonderful. And they're thinking, oh, I found the love of my life, and they're gonna just make everything wonderful for me and fill all those holes, and it's gonna be awesome. Is it though? What happens over time when the chemistry starts to wear down? A lot of people get together by chemistry only. So I'm going to take a right turn here. I'm going to bring up this topic, okay? And I'll get back on the main road. This is something that's very important to understand. Chemistry, attraction, is not love. That's the problem. Lust is not love. It's just not. It never was and never will be. You can't ever learn to know somebody if all there's taking place is a lot of chemistry. Because that's only one aspect of a true relationship. And yes, we all want to have chemistry. We all want to be desirable and also desire that person. That makes sense. I'm not saying that shouldn't be the case. But that can't be what is 100% of the relationship. Many times people get involved because of lust. And then they build this life with them already. Let's say you're at a party and you see someone across the room and they're like, ooh, they got your attention. And they're awesome and they're successful and they're handsome or beautiful or whatever you see in them. You work your way into the crowd and you want to meet them. You meet them. Fireworks. Oh my gosh, it's going off everywhere. You meet for coffee or you meet for dinner or whatever. It's amazing. Look at this. Oh my gosh, this is just fantastic. You have all these surface level things in common. Now, most people are, what they're doing is with the chemistry and the feelings, because it feels awesome and overwhelming, but it shuts down this part of the brain. You're not thinking clearly because the emotions and the chemistry is taking over. And then we build stories around that person. Then we think, oh, this is going to be amazing. We're going to travel together. We're going to do this together. We're going to do that. And we're going to have a house with a picket fence. And we're going to have children and dogs. And it's going to be amazing. And you build a fantasy life around this other person and how they make you feel. It's not very often in a mindset like that we think, what can I do for this person? How much true love do I have for them that I would lay down my life for them? It's all about the feel-good fantasy and the dream. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this. I'm in my 60s. I've seen it a lot, and I've talked to a lot of people over the years, mentoring and coaching. So you have each other, you have all this chemistry, all this surface stuff, you like the same music maybe, or the same books or whatever. It's surface commonalities, and you think, this is it. Yes. And it feels good for about 6 months after you put a ring on it. Or maybe not, maybe you just commit and move in with each other. That's a shallow commitment, but okay, you do that. Then life begins to happen. Defenses come up. Hurt feelings happen. A lack of communication happens. Yeah. And then it starts to fizzle a little bit. It just isn't feeling like this anymore. It's beginning to like that. And you work on it and you do this, right? And in a lot of cases, again, I'm generalizing, but just giving an overview, because you totally are expecting this person to make you feel good 100% and fill all your holes. And this person is expecting you to fill all their holes and make them feel good. It's an inside job, people. And you've heard me say, really, no one's going to love you more than you love yourself. And if they do, it should be icing on the cake. It should be awesome and beautiful. It should be wonderful and a wonderful connection. When two healthy human beings come together, knowing their flaws, there's a lot of goodness in it, but there's also an understanding that we're all still growing and learning. And there's an understanding that there's communication to be had when feelings are hurt, or miscommunication, or something happens where they just have a habit of doing something one way and you freaking out because, oh my gosh, that shouldn't happen. It should be this way. And you want to say, well, that hurts my feelings. That shouldn't be happening. Why is this happening? You have to talk about it. You have to be willing to be respectful with each other to talk about those things. And to understand that one another is coming into a relationship with some holes. But not to expect the other person to fix you. That's codependency. When we enter a relationship thinking, oh, I can fix this, I can fix him, I can fix her. No, you can't. You can't. You won't be able to. Especially if that person is very unaware of their situation in life, of their own personality, of their own old coping mechanisms from childhood. And if it's a person who comes from a troubled childhood or abusive childhood or was traumatized and never worked on it or never addressed it or didn't, or just kind of pushed it to the side, rarely, if ever, is there a healthy relationship made out of such a person's lack of awareness. Self-awareness is so important in a relationship. We have to be self-aware. And you have to come to the table both willing to talk, willing to listen to each other, and know each other really, really well. Now, statistically, they say, scientists or researchers or whatever, say knowing somebody for 2 years before you get married, let's say, or make that really true commitment is what's vital in a relationship. Because within 2 years, you've seen them in almost any aspect of life. You've seen them get angry. How do they handle their anger? You've seen them out in public. How do they handle wait people? The person who's waiting on you, waiting tables, or a service person. How do they treat them? Are they respectful? Are they kind? Do they show gratitude? Or do they look down on people? Do they gossip about people? Do they judge people? You know, Maya Angelou said, I keep quoting her because she has the best quotes. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. And usually within at least 1 year, someone's going to really show you who they really are. It's going to seep out one way or another. Because people can't hide their true selves that long, especially under certain circumstances, like being sick, being ill, being under pressure, maybe a loved one dying or whatever. How are they responding? These are key things to understand, because oftentimes some people want to make excuses for bad behavior. Oh, well, they're just really tired. Oh, they worked really hard. Or, oh, they just whatever. Once or twice, maybe. Yeah. We all kind of break down. We all lose it sometimes under pressure. I understand that. But I'm talking about a consistency. We can't continually make excuses for people's bad behavior. It's going to affect you in a relationship. It definitely will. So this is the difference between young love and a more mature love, right? So a young love, we enter into most commitments, most marriages or whatever, more by default mode than a self-awareness mode. I mean, that's just statistics. Now, being in a relationship, wow, it's relationships that really is like iron against iron, right? It can bring out the worst or the best in us. Even in friendships, or even in a family settings with siblings or neighbors, the true self comes to the surface, right? It really does. So, excuse me, take a drink of water. Thank you. Got some ice. So our true self comes to the surface. Now we have to be aware of our true self. And this is the point I'm making with all these videos, helping you understand who you really are, how to love yourself completely, flaws and all, knowing there's room for improvement for all of us. And it's owning our default mode. It's owning those points in us that are less than stellar. So I've heard people say, "Oh, that's just who I am. I'm a hothead. I just blow it. I'm just that way." I'm like, okay, I don't think so, but okay. I think you're a very passionate person. I think you came into this world and you're very passionate about things and you want to express yourself that way. And that's a wonderful thing. But if you had situations in your young life where you were traumatized, that passion can turn into anger or defiance or rebellion. And then you carry that through adulthood with that coping mechanism, and you think, well, that's just who I am. But that's really not. We're not in this, we didn't come to this world to be wallflowers or feel terrible about ourselves or feel like the world owes you and you're entitled and you're arrogant, and none of that. Those are just reactions to what happened to us when we were younger. Love needs to be the basis. Stability needs to be the basis. Balance needs to be the basis in our life. Coherency. All those things. Is it always perfect 100% in us? Probably not. But the goal is to try and be of one mind, of solid mind, body, mind, and soul. I'm trying to think of the word. Cohesion. There's another word, I'll think of it. It just grew wings and flew away, so it'll come to me. So I'm going to be aware of the time. Okay. So many people work very hard in their relationships. Some people don't even bother. Some people want it easy. Some people think they're entitled to an easy relationship. Like I said earlier, they're going to fix me, or they're going to take care of me. They're going to fill all my holes. They're going to make me feel lovable. They're going to make me worthy. They're going to make me have self-esteem. No. No one can make you do that. That's an inside job, especially as an adult. As children, we never chose how we were treated. We didn't choose to be traumatized or abused. That wasn't our choice at all. But as adults, it is our choice to try and make sense of it and fix those things within ourselves. And that can be through therapy or counseling. A lot of books, TED Talks. I mean, they're very different, many means to get the help that you need or that you want. I'm sure I can tell you this, there are a lot of people who've been where you are and have gotten through it, and they've shared their story. I'm here sharing mine. I've been through a lot in my life. And again, I told you my story in the beginning on that first day. I share a little bit about my marriage. I was married for 26 years, and I dated him 4 years before that. It was, I married in default mode, and so did he. We're both completely in default mode and had no self-awareness. I didn't understand or could even barely talk about the abuse that I grew up with. I just pushed it aside. And boy, in my late 20s, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's not a good idea. Never do that. That's not a good idea. So like I said, pain is our teacher, and our life, we'll bump up against life, and our guidance system is saying, hey, let me help you here. There's no fun to be in this kind of pain. So let's do something about it. Those are our aha moments. And sometimes if we don't pay attention, they slip away. And then we hit up against life a little harder, get more of our attention. We're like, oh gosh, that's right. I better do something about this. And I was busy raising 4 children, and I was working part-time. I was back in school part-time, volunteering, and was very busy in my life. The busyness did 2 things. At first, it helped me not to see or address some of these things that I needed to in my own life. And then the second thing is, it got so difficult, I had to. I did. It just was like, the marriage wasn't working well. I was just exhausted. I got very, very sick and wound up in the hospital because I just wouldn't stop. I couldn't stop. I was caring for 4 children. and a husband, and um, a less than attentive husband, I'll put it that way. And it was difficult. It was very difficult. So I got sick and I wound up in the hospital. I wound up in the hospital twice. That's how bad it was for me to get, life was like, are you paying attention yet? So yes, I finally did pay attention. I did. I started getting the help I needed and had a great therapist. I mean, amazing. And also in just different support groups that were really, really beneficial for me. And as I got better and healing and recovering and gaining myself and my voice and my individuality and loving myself and accepting myself and growing and learning, I had a passion to help others. That's just in me. That I came into the world that way. That's part of my personality. We need to understand what our personality is too. Well, I came into the world that way. I was a kid and I was always helping others. My mom would tell me stories. I just am like that. I don't know what to say. So I went on to get my degree, further my education, went to many different conferences, and still keep learning and growing because I want to be of service. I want to help others. So if my story and all these things I've been sharing along the way can help you, I'm delighted for that. And I will say this, I do coach, I do mentor, and I have adopted my psychic work into my coaching. And I also practice mediumship. If you ever want to work with me, if you ever have questions for me, you can contact me at info.maryalice, MARYALICE, @gmail.com. I don't have a fancy email address, but you can get a hold of me that way. If you have any questions or if you'd like to work with me, let's connect and we can talk about that. The other thing I'm hoping to do is develop a group work and do it through Zoom. I know I love being person to person. I did it for years and years, and nowadays seems, a little more difficult, and Zoom seems to be a really good place to do it. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, please let me know, because I'd love to do that. And I love group work. I love it so much. It's just the friendships that come out of the groups and the love and the growing and the learning. It's remarkable. So anyway, keep that in mind. Let me know if that's interest. You can email me. So, okay, I'm going to leave that there. I also have an office number, and maybe I'll put it in the information below. Okay, so let me continue on. Relationships are very important to have. We all want them. We come into the world needing them, right? A human baby is the most defenseless being on the planet. If you think about it, think of the animals that come, they begin to walk right away. They nurse right away. They follow their moms around. I mean, we are defenseless. We have to have our mothers and our fathers and decent caregivers care for us, to give us love and nurturance and feed us and bathe us and clothe us and kiss us and coo at us and smile at us and tell us stories and guide us and all that stuff. We need that to make a healthy child. I had some of that. I had the practical. I think I shared with you. I felt very hurted in my family, not nurtured. But I had clothes, I had food, I had a home, a nice neighborhood. I had terrible attention, all dysfunctional, abusive attention from my father. And my mother at the time was busy with 8 children. She was depressed herself. So I didn't get her much. I was hurted. So my beginnings were difficult, and I was bullied as well for a couple of years that's another story. But I had to figure life out myself. As like a lot of us have to. We have to like take stock and look around and be observant. That all plays into who we are. Children cannot have an adult brain and figure things out, but between the primitive part of the brain and our observations, we try to do the best we can. And those belief systems that we develop do get carried into adulthood. And this is what I mean about living by default. We just take for granted that that's just who we are and that's how life is. And this is the way it's supposed to be. And we learn along the way. There is some growing. There is some learning. We have friends and family. We see things a little more observantly, and things aren't so closed in and egotistical and subjective. We begin to see the outside world a little better. And that is a good thing. Hopefully. We know there are different people. There are different personalities. There are different religions. There are, different cultures. And hopefully respect that. But some don't because of how they were raised. They believe other people are less than, or that they're better, or that they're not good enough and they're better. The things we tell ourselves. It plays a part in who we are and how we relate to others. So when we want to have a very close, intimate, beautiful relationship with somebody, we have to show up fully ourselves, fully self-love and very present. Again, knowing that we have growth to do, knowing that they have some more growth to do, more growing to do, more awareness. But when we come at it in a mature way, that love life can be explosively rewarding. Perfect? No, but very rewarding. So here's an example, and I'm going to continue this on Friday, okay, because there's more to be said, and I want to go into a little more detail. There's somebody that I really admire, and she shared something, and I liked her perspective on it because it makes sense. And we've probably heard it in different ways anyway. But if there is like miscommunication or hurt feelings in their relationship, she doesn't go, "Oh, how dare you? You said this, and that made me feel this way." Mm-mm. She'll say, "Hey, when you have a minute, can we just talk about something?" And then when they arrange a good time to do that, yeah. She'll go, "You know what? Earlier today when whatever happened or whatever was said, whatever, this is my story about that." So right away, she's taking ownership of how she felt, of what happened in her head and feelings, what her story was about that situation. And she'll explain it that way, not blaming, not hating, not anything. It's just, okay, this is how I felt. This is my story about this. Am I reading that right? And that gave partner a chance to say, "Oh my gosh, I see how okay, I understand now why you felt that way. And no, that's not at all what I meant. I was whatever situation. I was in a hurry and I'm really sorry and I didn't communicate that well." Right there, okay, the end. Hugs and kisses, sorries, apologies, go on with life. That's it. That's beautiful. And that makes such a beautiful, loving relationship. Now, it sounds maybe oversimplified, but I did want to give you that example because I think it's important that we understand how we can respect one another and love one another and not just blow up or run away and hide or cry or, it's really using the combination of our intuition and our thought process of going, okay, maybe they didn't really mean it that way. Let me find out before I come up with all kinds of horrible things I'm thinking and feeling bad about. It might not even be the case. And when you have two healthy, mature adults coming together, do you see the difference? Rather than this person going, "How dare you say that about me? And I would never do," and they're blowing off the handle. What is the point? It just makes things worse in our hearts and in our lives. But we have to be self-aware, and we have to come to the table, even with friendships. I've had some friendships where it was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they just did that. Why did they? Oh my gosh. And I was truly, and these are people I've known for 25, 30 years. But I had to go back in my head and go, okay, what story am I telling myself about this? And how did they mean that? And when we discussed it, it was like, okay, I see now. I understand. I understand your point of view, and they understood my point of view. And yeah, there was a little hurt feelings, but it wasn't on purpose. It wasn't meant to be that way. And then we understood each other better and how to communicate better with one another. That's the whole point of it, is to learn and to grow together. Now, on Friday, I'm going to share how that can happen. Okay, I'll do this for under an hour. I don't want you to lose attention, but this is so important to understand. So to recap, we come into the world, we have difficulties, probably trauma, we make up stories about ourselves about it, build coping mechanisms, drag them into adulthood. Those coping mechanisms don't work anymore. We have no self-awareness. We think we're entitled to our hurt feelings instead of trying to find out what just happened here. Where were they coming from? Maybe they were mean-spirited, but I don't have to take that for myself. Or if you're in a partnership, to have the maturity to talk about things together and come together that way. That's why it's so important to know a person before you marry them, before you get into a commitment, to really, really know them and see how they show up for you in the world. How do you show up for them in the world? That's important. So we'll continue this because I really think our relationships help create our happiness or our misery in life. And a lot of that depends on ourselves. So thank you for listening. Let's see some of the other topics we're going to cover on Friday. Values, traditions. We talked a little bit about default versus purpose, living on purpose. We talked a little bit about young love versus mature love, although I will say mature love, some people still live in default, no matter how old they are. They don't ever work on themselves. They don't ever take time for self-awareness. It could be too painful, or it could be they think they're too good for that, or they, I don't know. There are a lot of reasons, but usually the older we get, we learn more. Older and wiser, right? I wish we could have been young and wise. Anyway, thank you for listening. You are awesome. And don't ever, ever forget that you are an amazing human being. You truly are. And you're a miracle on this planet. There's only one of you. Make the best of it. And you matter so much. So take care. See you Friday. Bye for now. And God bless to you.